maybe from slide one. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so dat, which is something me, Nina, Alex, we're all going trying to be starting working on pretty soon. Dat is meant to be a pinning service for dat, which, like, I'm not sure how much you guys have heard about that before in the earlier talks today, but like you need something to guarantee that like a storage system is actually reliable. So dat is a decentralized version of what currently exists in the dat ecosystem, which is Hashbase, which is something run by Paul Frezzi. So it can participate in making dat reliable and useful for everybody else. Yeah, so like in human terms, that means we want to have friendly, reliable file storage. The updating comes from dat, the reliable comes from dat, hopefully, and anybody can host things on. But ideally, we make an ecosystem where friends can host files for friends, and we make it really easy for like people to make small groups that host files for each other. Technically speaking, dat consists of an interface that lets you access dat archives and manage the backends that these dat archives are going to be managed by themselves. So you've heard about dat, but like the backends that dat is going to be using, or like that we've been working with so far, are built using this framework called Substrate, which lets you actually create a blockchain with arbitrary logic. But I'm going to be talking about dat mostly today. Yeah, but that's where the name comes from, dat. And currently what Substrate is used for is something called Polkadot, which is an ecosystem that connects many different blockchains, and hopefully maybe some dat groups will connect to Polkadot itself in the future, but like long term. So audio, are you guys online?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. So there's actually some properties of dat that makes it really easy to makes it easier to build a system like this using dat. And you may have heard that dat is composed of append-only logs called hypercores. And the actual data structure that those append-only logs use is something called a Merkle mountain range. And the Merkle mountain ranges have some really interesting properties. For one thing, as you add things to the Merkle mountain range, all of the roots of the Merkle mountain range are at deterministic indexes. So that means if you have a sparse array of some kind, you can store any dat archive, or sorry, any hypercore by just adding things to the end of the Merkle mountain range, or adding chunks to adding leaves to the Merkle mountain range, and that means that you never end up having to override anything else, and you never have to move anything around, and it's easy to do math about where things are and where things should be, which means that like for building a distributed system on top of, that's really friendly. You don't have to worry about people acting badly because everything is repeatable in how the data structure grows. So back to dat. What does dat do using this like nice, friendly data structure? Dat lets you run a service on chain on our distributed backend. all we do is store really minimal metadata for dat. Like the length of the hypercores, the pub keys, the a known recent Merkle root, maybe some information about like the next things that we do with it, and then we use that information, and in something off chain we create encrypted mirrors of the DATs that we want to have pinned reliably. I say encrypted. The technically correct term is we sign it, but the signature isn't over the hash of the data, but the signature is over the actual data itself. That way we avoid people Merkle Mountain Range for your DAT archives and not actually storing the data itself. And the keys that we use to sign the archives are provided by the rest of the network, not by the person who's storing it. So there's no way for them to falsify that they are storing the things that they're asked to store. And then we respond to challenges that are produced randomly on the distributed backend based on the encrypted thing that we create, right? So there's no way for people to generate it on the fly and then provide it back to the network. Like, people can have a guarantee that people are actually storing the data that they're storing. And that's done automatically by our distributed service. And then people can decrypt that data because it's a signature, and you have the public key that signature, or you have the public key to recover data from the signature on the fly to participate with the actual DAT network. And that means that, like, hey, they're actually doing a useful thing, because you can communicate with them through the actual DAT network, and actually we're doing something useful for DAT. So that lets you track the reliability of storage, and we reward people for that somehow. And we reward them by, like, using the service that, like, other people are running now. So when you want to use dat, you submit DAT archives that you want other people to host, and you know exactly how reliably it's hosted, because you know which chunks are pinned by which people, and you know when they're active and when they're not, and if they go offline, you know. So it gives you some degree of confidence in the availability of your DAT, even if you're not hosting it personally. And then that means that, like, people can contribute spare capacity to the network to improve their own quality of service by, like, temporarily running a service for other people. And I'm sure that, like, everybody has, like, spare disk capacity, which means that, like, this could theoretically just, like, exist on its own, just with spare capacity that people have sitting around. Oh no, refresh.
Well, mine works. Can you still hear us?
Sorry?
You can still hear us?
Yeah, I can.
All right, okay. Okay. Cool.
Did y'all miss anything?
No, it seemed to work totally fine. Cool.
Okay. So, like, because this distributed backend is, like, very generic, we can in the future possibly think of adding extra logic, and then in that way expand the DAT ecosystem by, like, having more diverse applications and things that you can build that interact with DAT, instead of just web applications, which you can of course use Beaker browser and JavaScript to make quite interesting applications with already nowadays. Beaker browser, has it been mentioned already? at some point today.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
with that,
you know, like you can create.
So with that, you mean the hypercores. So any data structure that uses hypercores, whether they're like the full file system or maybe those chats that we heard about earlier, they would all be able to benefit from the pinning.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like reliability for hypercores, which like is a nice way to put the entire thing that we're trying to build, like make hypercores.
Also, like Novel before mentioned that Cabal also needs like one instance to run in the server. So basically,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, unless your laptop is like online day and night, then,
yeah.
but yeah, it always helps.
So like I was told 10 minutes, but like looking at the schedule you guys have, it was 30 minutes. Do you have any like things you want to talk about? Any questions?
I mean, I kind of know the thing. Were you able to follow?
I didn't understand the incentive structure, like why someone would host information.
So the actual incentive structure, like we're building this on Substrate, and Substrate is a blockchain framework, and if you want, you can use that use hosting to mint tokens. But I'm planning to like build this in a way that it's generic, so you can put in your own incentive structures. So like at first it'll be like a ratio, like a torrenting ratio, where like if you upload lots of things, you should probably also store lots of things as well to have reliable service. It could just be that you mint tokens as you store files, and then we can get those tokens onto other networks and trade them. But like, there's a question as to whether like doing tokens and stuff is a good idea, which is why we want generic.
Is there like one path forward that makes sense? Because oftentimes when you have more than one option, you end up doing none, or none of them happen.
So
like, what would the default be?
the default would be like everybody can create their own like little dot ecosystem and just track a ratio. But like this is for DAT is being funded by a Web3 Foundation grants program. So like the funding relies on us connecting to the Polkadot network, which is like a large network of lots of blockchains that are gonna like intercommunicate. And that means that like ideally we have like a token that can interact with this network as well, and that people can use on dexes or whatever.
How's the process?
So
how's the progress of the Polkadot network? I haven't really heard much from them. Although I'm sure they've been working hard.
Polkadot has like a live network that is technically like has all the technical features and stuff that was meant to go into Polkadot itself. That's been running for a few months, called Kusama, and like actual Polkadot proper is going to be launching late December, early January.
I mean, I don't like
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, Kusama already in a way is Polkadot, but if something goes wrong, you don't want to call something Polkadot already, so you're calling it something else. But if it works out,
No,
I mean,
but like Kusama is never going to turn into actual Polkadot. Kusama is going to survive as its own thing.
so it's gonna stay after also.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe you can tell people something about the substrate in general. It's a framework you mentioned to build.
It's written in Rust.
Yeah, Substrate is a Rust framework where you can create arbitrary blockchains. It's what we're using to build Polkadot and Kusama and DAT.
Could you build like a Bitcoin client?
Yeah, a Bitcoin client itself, like Bitcoin itself, probably not, because not with the parts that you get out of the box, because networking is like it has like libp2b baked into it, and Bitcoin doesn't use libp2b. But you could write your own like networking bit and then plug it into Substrate, and then you would have a Bitcoin client.
But yeah, I mean the point.
So you can just use tons of different modules, or maybe people create new ones and then you just plug them into features you want on your blockchain.
Yeah, so like you have dat and you can store dats, and then you can do logic around as well.
All right, so basically I can combine the dat with existing other modules, whatever they are, and make like a new mashup of features that includes that, and make my own blockchain. And I can connect that blockchain either to Polkadot or I use it standalone.
Yeah, or Kusama.
Yeah, right, sure.
So what are the features that we will use in that dot? Like, because we said that we will go with like absolutely minimal blockchain. So basically we will use it as backend that does the checking if that is hosted, right?
Yeah, we just like do some cryptography on chain basically, and like these and random numbers.
Could we do this without blockchain?
Could we do this without blockchain? We could make a nice front end to like show you who's hosting your DAT and where they are, and like people can volunteer to host DATs. But what we couldn't do is random number generation and trusted, like verifiably, like checking that a DAT is actually hosted.
Also, some
this would have to be a backend, but then you would have to trust this backend to do these checks. So in this sense, we need to have some backend that is transparent and not hosted by one person or like one company or organization.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you want to say, Alex?
No, exactly. That's so basically also all the part of the tracking the ratio. And maybe if somebody like ran, or not donated, but provided like disk space capacity for like half a year, and then they feel like, oh, now I want to have my own data hosted, but I don't have now capacity to share my disk space. Now they're guaranteed to get priority, and then they can have their data pinned by the network because they were doing that job for the last half a year with their disks. And I guess without a blockchain, that would be kind of hard to track and make sure.
Long term, yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah, people are like I said this not before, like mainly new to that. So now to expect questions immediately, it's kind of hard because it has to sink in, I guess. But yeah, are we good? Cool. Then I guess we will thank you for taking time early in the morning for us.
Cool.
And if you want to stay around, I think we have Mark already. Is that you, Mark? Yeah, because we haven't seen each other ever before. We just follow each other on Twitter. But Mark is working on a tool called JSCAD.
OpenJSCAD.
How?
OpenJSCAD.
OpenJSCAD. And he's using that also in the tool. So maybe we can just move to the next speaker. Thank you, Joshua.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Oh, you're muted.
No. I can hear that. Perfect.
Meet Alex.
Hey. Nice to see you.
Alex.
Hey.
Yeah, likewise.
It's so funny because we are following each other like for, I don't know, maybe even years.
We haven't seen each other even once.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That's really
But
funny.
cool.
You are based in Germany, so it's also morning. I mean, kind of 10:30 there.
After coffee.
I think.
So how do we do this?
You can share the screen in the bottom left. You have this one.
Yeah, there's a screen share button. It might need an extension if you don't have it installed yet, but
it shouldn't be too hard, I think. Does it ask you for extension?
No, it didn't. Wait a second.
Are you in Chrome?
Yes, I do have the Zoom extension, but I'm not sure that's related.
No, it's a different one, I think.
I thought we will actually go with Zoom, but then I think why did we decide?
No, I think something was like with installation and that we only have like a limited amount of time. And also
it's just
Google,
like with Zoom you
with
get
accounts, so we
limited amount.
thought this one is maybe the best solution. You don't need an account, you can just use it.
I'm checking the thing. I see a recording, live stream, shared document, perhaps. I don't know.
Interesting.
Wait, so if you click this share, wait, who's this?
So that's me.
Oh, okay. Do you see the hand in the top bottom left side? There is like one hand.
Yes.
And next to the hand, like left from the hand, is a share your screen. What happens if you click that?
Yeah, that should work. Just a sec. I actually have one sec because I wanted to share the presentation on that so that everyone can have it beforehand. So
oh yes, we can share the link in the Telegram channel.
Yeah.
Oh, are you in the Telegram channel, by the way?
No. That hasn't done installing, and the kids were quite busy this morning. So I haven't had time.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, there's a web interface for Telegram.
Somehow it wouldn't load for me, but
okay.
It's demo effect as usual. So just a sec, I'm almost done. Should really just take a minute. Slides.
So JSCat is something else?
Open JSCat?
No, but like JSCat exists also? No, okay, because I always kind of call this JSCat an open JSCat.
There used to be like cats.
We now use JSCat as a shorthand because JSCat is a bit too long for us.
Are you using a computer, this microphone? Because I have hard time hearing you well.
Yes, I don't have a separate microphone. I don't know, just a second.
Maybe headphones? Can you hear now? Or maybe you can make it louder.
I think I'm on max.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, we will just be very quiet.
Okay, just a sec. I can actually, it depends on how much time you have. I could try to get a mic. It usually isn't the problem with the...
Okay.
I think it's good.
It's okay.
So, about this reload. So are you seeing anything?
Yay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So hi everyone. So I'll talk to you basically about our little mishmash between JSCat and that. So let's get started. You can find the presentation on that here if you want. And everything should be in there already. So first of all, what is JSCat or OpenJSCat? It's a parametric 2D and 3D code-based modeling tool. And if you ask yourself, sorry.
Oh no.
No, just like
for some reason my computer is lagging severely, so that's always fun.
All right.
So what is that? So basically, you draw things by coding, in case you are not coding enough as it is. So this turns into that. No jokes. Sorry, I think it's going to be very slow because it seems like the screen sharing is taking a good chunk of the bandwidth, so it's rather weird. So it's all just functions and modules. And if it's willing to go to the next slide. Okay, this should be fun. So basically, you can turn a whole set of simple JavaScript. Simple is always relative. Into
your screen is not shared.
Sorry?
Your screen stopped sharing.
Oh, that's great. So just a second. Demo effect is always there, isn't it? We'll try to close that. Is it back?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, good.
Into this.
Where did it come from?
What was the thing that was turned into this?
Cube?
The slide that got eaten by the screen sharing. Seriously, I don't know what's going on because it's pretty much eating all of the PC's resources. So
Really?
I don't
Should we switch to Hangout, Google Hangout?
Do you have Google Hangout?
It's as you wish because it's kind of dumb to have to switch, but yeah, it's pretty much frozen completely on my end.
Yes, I think Google Hangout is much more stable, but like
before Mob didn't feel like using it, so we were then just.
Yeah, but we can do Google Hangout. Maybe that's a little bit more reliable, even though it's Google.
Can you?
But yeah, whatever.
Do you use Google?
Yeah, I will have a Hangout account.
But Zoom, we cannot create.
Yeah, we don't have an account for.
I have it. I can create Zoom link, but then we're limited on 40 minutes.
Yes.
Only.
Yeah.
But Hangout worked fine last time.
Then let's do the Hangout. Mark, I'm gonna send you, or Alex can maybe through Jitsi even. There's a chat.
Do the video call. How do I do this? All right.
Video call, and then he can send the link.
Join or start meeting.
Sounds a good idea.
Amigos.
Last time we had the same problem, and then we switched to Google Hangout, and it was actually better. I mean,
well, hopefully, right now for me, Brave is completely frozen and wants to kill the computer.
Copy joining info,
okay,
and
so
I give it on Telegram, right?
No, here on
Oh, on the
Jitsi.
Jitsi chat.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here's a chat. Can you access the chat?
Here in the no, just a second, because right now it's still frozen.
Yeah. Okay, then where are you connected to, Alex? On Twitter?
On Twitter, I can give you the thing on Twitter.
Oh yeah, that's the simplest I guess.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a minute.
Yeah.
Then you can turn off Jitsi. Yeah. I can also join.
Yes. On Telegram too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he built the whole tool.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
All right. I quit Jitsi and I moved to Hangout. Admit. Hey, hello. All right. So, Griff. All right. Hey ho! So we're waiting for our speaker.
So everybody's here, just the speaker has to join.
Yeah, just the speaker is missing.
Who's speaking today? James?
No, he did already, but we have a speaker who will present Dot, and I mean Dot and OpenJSCAD, which is a 3D modeling tool, 2D 3D modeling tool where you model with code, and it's also using that.
Oh, they're also using a tool called CatCat.
Yeah, CatCat. Today's JSCAD, not CatCat.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll just listen in then.
Yeah, I hope he will join. I sent him the link on Twitter.
I thought it was JSCat.
Like a cat, like a with a T. Yeah.
So it's cats.
Like a game.
So let's see.
But this is
Keep going.
actually, this is now for like your 3D. I mean for the. Yeah.
No, you wouldn't use this, but that'd be good for displaying something. But you would want to use it. Maybe Maybe if you wanted to make it like
He's building like some
formulaically make it like with algorithms, but you wouldn't use it for like
real thing.
well, it depends on the use case.
Yeah.
Or
You can modify it more easily maybe.
So let's see.
Everything is possible, but some things are harder than others.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See ya. So I wonder if he did see my message. Can you check on Telegram? Ah, perfect. Hey, okay, it seemed to work. Perfect.
Hey,
So
yes.
now you have to
Can you hear
present.
me?
Yes.
Good. So
Now
what did
you-
that work?
Yeah.
I
In
hope
the
so.
lower right, you have the presentation button. Hopefully that works this time.
Just in case, I pretty much killed everything else running on the computers. I hope it works. Sec.
And you could still stream?
Yeah, I think it should still do that. Yeah.
But before you said that you cannot switch.
No, it worked. I think I just lost the web.
Can you see it?
It's still loading.
It's still
but-
doing something, and let's see. Maybe I have to. I'm not sure if it's on and I have to do something.
Wait.
Well, it's telling me the presentation
I
is
see it
on.
here. Look, Alex.
Oh,
Yeah, you pinned the
okay.
wrong, yeah, you have to unpin this.
Yes, I pinned the wrong thing. One second.
It's on the middle of the screen. Middle of your screen.
Oh,
Unpin it.
thank you. So I unpinned it. Oh, perfect. All right, now it works.
Oh,
Lovely.
okay.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So hey, it actually works at a reasonable speed now. Great.
Yeah, that's advantage.
So that's good indeed. So you can turn basically a small set of JavaScript into 3D and 2D shapes. It's also parametric. So your design, since it's mostly functions, can change based on values provided by users. So for example, in the background, you can see the difference. Only thing that changes is the value of the parameter. So how can you do things? You have a simple toolbox of 2D and 3D shapes, of transformations, so you can move, rotate, scale objects, like that. And then you can combine them, gluing them together, essentially cutting them and keeping the intersection of things. So it's pretty much very basic, but you can do a lot with little blocks. There's also lots of other functions in there, so you can transform 2D shapes into 3D ones. You can sort of wrap stuff around them and things like that. So lots and lots of things. So really, parametric is essential. I'll get back to that in later parts. And it's simple. It really is just JavaScript. There's no magic. There's no hidden complexity. It's really just functions returning data that gets turned into 2D and 3D shapes. And it's functions everywhere. We're moving to an even more functional API in the future. And we love functions. And it leverages whatever we can of the JavaScript ecosystem standards. So to recap, the code, you expose and tweak parameters. You can see it on the side. You can change things and it automatically updates. And then if you have a 3D printer or any other device, you can, well, just have it in your hand after a few minutes. Are you still there?
Yep.
Yes. Cool.
Good. So what can you make with this? Well, a lot of things. For example, lampshades or robots, or and this might be familiar to some, 3D printed keyboard gloves, still ongoing. And
Yay.
also something like paper elephants. There are a lot of people doing paper crafts with these cats.
How does that work? I mean, 3D printer otherwise prints, but what about this?
Sorry?
I mean, the other things that you showed were 3D printed, but what about the paper stuff? How do you?
Well, you can output SVG, DXF, and any 2D format as well. And there's one of our users in particular who does a lot with basically laid flat objects wrapped like really as you were if you were rolling over it, and then he cuts it with a laser cutter, and then he glues it together. So you can also output 2D designs, and some people are doing some great stuff with that.
It sounds like it'd be really hard to actually go from a 3D model into the actual code. Do you have anything to unwrap a 3D model into the code?
No. Well, yes and no. There you can import existing 3D data, and that's you have two options. Either it gets turned into code, or you just can use the 3D model you already have and cut holes in it, or stretch it, or combine it, something like that.
So the use case of JSCAD is mostly to do parametric configuration, so to get the user to like tweak data and get the results?
Well, it's mostly you do designs and you iterate fast. So since it's all in code, so I can talk to you, for example, about this robot, which I spent quite a lot of time on. So you have, for example, somebody who does a design which can't be changed. So you sort of recode it, and then you, for example, you want a special holder for a specific battery. So you make some changes in the code, and now you can adapt the design to your needs. And typically what you do is you iterate real fast. So you create a first rough draft to see, for example, a screwdriver holder. So you just create a basic shape. You print it out. If you have a 3D printer, you see if it works. If it doesn't, you go tweaking some values, you try again, and so on and so forth. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. So in this scenario, for example, you'd be downloading the 3D model for the robot case, and then you'd be doing modification on top of it with JSCAD. Is that right?
No, well, you can do that, but the best option is still to just have the code itself, because it will always be more compact than any 3D file format.
Mm.
So basically, you write the code, but then because you have some parameters that you can tweak, you can always adapt it based on, I don't know, the width and, I don't know, the height of the battery.
Exactly.
I think
Yep.
I think what I found very interesting too is that if you make a device, it's pretty easy to make like a landing page where people could actually, for example, buy it, but before they buy it, they have a form or whatever, and they kind of, or maybe even through the webcam and some kind of gesture recognition, or they figure out your hand size, you could like tweak the parameters through the web app so that you basically get, you order like a custom version of whatever you want to order, and the user adapts that in the web interface, and you get that kind of for free.
Exactly. There's a lot of people using these kind of programs to create prosthetics for kids, for example, who have lost their hands. So of course, you want something, or partial prosthetics, and you just need to make sure that the parameters actually change the relevant parts of your design. But you can pretty much adapt anything to any need.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so don't worry, there's still other things that may perhaps make it more clear. So you have different flavors of OpenJSCAD. So we provide a hosted version. There's nothing special about it. It's literally the same thing as you would have locally. We don't actually store data or anything. It's just for convenience if you don't want to install something. There's also command line tools, which can be quite practical if you're just dealing on the server. There's a desktop app, and of course, there's a set of node modules and packages. So you can just mix the things together based on what you need. And so we're going to see how we connected this to that. So for that, what I found absolutely amazing is how simple it was to use. I mean, I used a fair bit of decentralized and code sharing and a lot of different things, and none were quite as easy to use as that with Beaker. The documentation is also, I found, amazingly good. I was able to get things running in a few hours from scratch. What was also very interesting for us is how it's versioned, truly decentralized, and that it's way more accessible to do some interesting things that I'll get to in a minute, way more easily than with Git. So yeah, because in the end, JSCAD designs are just really files and folders and mostly just text. So it really lends itself quite well to version things, because you can, well, you'll see, do some really interesting things. Like, so we integrated it in, I think I spent around 3 hours maximum on the initial data integration. And I was really blown away, because basically you can have a person coding their design, just sharing the DATS URL, and then the other person can see the changes basically live with the design as soon as they are published. And well, it's just code, so it goes extremely fast. I wasn't able to do double recordings on 2 computers for this, but it's near instantaneous. I already tried it with someone who was at the other end of the world, and it still works amazingly fast. So what you can also do with this, and it's very practical, imagine you had a specific version of your design that worked better. Well, then, given the ability to specify a version in that, you can just go back and immediately go back to a specific version of your CAD design. So in itself, it's just that, but once it's hooked together with CAD like this, it's really quite amazing to use in practice. So there's also a few examples. So I think the screen sharing might not quite work. Tell me if you're not seeing this. Did you see me switching to another button?
No, maybe because you didn't share the whole desktop. Just
I wasn't sure about that. So can I?
yeah, you can stop and share it again now.
Let's try it out.
And
wow, this is amazing, actually. So when you're sharing with somebody, this person can only see the updates, right? You cannot like both work on the same document, because that doesn't have a multi-writer feature, but the other one can watch live, right?
that's the multi-writer feature is really very interesting for the future, because that would allow actually collaborative work. But for now, it's one-directional, but it's already valuable because, for example, JSCAD is used quite a bit for educational purposes, because with simple math, you can have 3D shapes that kids can understand. And I worked for the Kodo Dojo here in Germany, and teenagers get it extremely fast. So they were able to understand the principles and get something 3D printed within 2 hours. And so you could have remote mentoring, things like this, well, educational aspects, which are already made very simple by this. So.
Can I just ask you one more thing? How do you access that history? Are you using Hyperdrive?
That's actually a built-in feature from that and Beaker by default. I don't know if it's very well known, but you can just add +10 or plus whatever, and you get to the version that you have here. So V6 or V something, and you directly access that version.
So basically you are not bothering with making that work inside of your tool in the browser or standalone. You're actually using the Beaker.
Yes, exactly. So the DAT archive features of Beaker are absolutely amazing, because you can get that really working. I mean, really, it was extremely simple and fast to do. and it's just in the standard. The versioning thing. So yes, we do have some bit of special code on our end to do the live updates, so that each time there's a notification from that there was a new version pushed for the DAT archive, then we automatically refresh it. There's a bit of boilerplate, but most of the work is really done in Beaker itself.
So basically, when you make a workshop, you make participants download the Beaker and open your tool in the Beaker.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the main inconvenience for now is, well, the sort of issues that you can't easily have. Well, you can't embed that and use them outside of Beaker that easily.
I mean, there is this SDK that Mo built, and we are experimenting with this part to use it in the classic browsers.
Yeah, we're having a tool where we right now use it,
but it doesn't come with all these features that Beaker has on top of just that.
It's not yet as smooth as in Beaker.
Okay, but does it still have the issue that you're limited to? I forgot the name. You know, the one specific type of networks by I think the WebRTC, so that you are not actually quite on the same network as the rest of the DATs.
You need a proxy.
Okay, so you still need something like Hashbase or something to make it available.
Yeah, like you need like a gateway server, and it bridges you into the net with all the other dot clients that run maybe on the command line or in Beaker. But the gateway is interchangeable. You can run your own, or you use one of the available ones. Maybe you can even define a list of them, and then pick a random one every time. So yeah.
That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that's already, at least for small workshops, I think that's sometimes more practical than having people down on Beaker. But in the coder dojos, we provide the computers usually, so it's not really a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think the hope is that, like, if it's available in regular browsers, people can try things, and if they like the tools and they like the features, then maybe we could recommend them. You could also download Beaker, and then things go even faster and smoother. But like, if you don't know it yet, to immediately download Beaker is maybe like a little bit much. So yeah.
Now the thing is, for us, this is still our upcoming version. So the current old version of OpenJSCAD doesn't have this support yet, so it's not particularly bad, because by the time we release it, it's going to be still a few months, so it's always more time. So I'm going to move on with the rest of the things. So this also ties in with what we just said. So what we hope in the future is for people to be able to share their design portions. So like you designed a special set of nuts, screws, bolts, and closures for Raspberry Pi that other people inside the design. So ideally, of course, it would be nice if they could directly include it within their design. Because right now, a lot of our users are not necessarily very familiar with the Node ecosystem. So for them to publish something on NPM or GitHub is not always very accessible. So this is one thing we're looking for is basically if they have something like Beaker on an easier UI, that they can really share that way more easily.
So you're saying somebody could just write a little bit of OpenJSCAD JavaScript code inside of the app, and then basically share that with that, because that is built into the tool, or in the Beaker browser it's available, and then somebody else can just grab that link and require it in their design and just get the data directly. That's pretty convenient.
Because, yes, well, the thing is, this is not working yet.
Yeah, right.
But the thing is, we already provide a special version of the require function for the browser. Don't get me started on ES6 imports, because that's a whole other mess. But at least this would be possible because we already override the way it behaves. And yes, this is absolutely possible, because in the end, what gets returned here is just JavaScript. There's absolutely nothing special about it. So what we're also thinking of is having perhaps a sort of special hash base in our website just for convenience. So this is always very difficult because we don't have much time, manpower, and whatever and whatnot. So we always try to provide convenience, but without it costing us too much work. So this is up in the air. And of course, the ultimate goal would be collaborative editing with, yes, as you said it earlier, the multi-writer hyperdrive. And that would be absolutely amazing, because for now, if you want to do 3D design, there are only commercial services available that provide this kind of thing, and you're completely locked in there, and it's very shady usually, and not cheap either. So
I think Nofel before mentioned that kappa-db enables multi-writer, I think, but kappa-db is not supported by Beaker, I think. So then you don't get this convenience.
Well, the thing is, since we also have a desktop app, that's also something we wonder at some point if we couldn't, well, we could integrate whatever we want, basically. But yeah, it's always the amount of time it would cost or not. Honestly, I tried multi-writer around a year ago, and it was still a bit too early. So yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever comes out, because that would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, hopefully we can help with the specialized hash-based part, but it will take us a bit.
We're building like a service for people to more easily pin each other that's, so that, you know, if you have a computer open and you have some storage available while you are online, you can actually share. And then if everybody does, maybe, you know, we manage to cover all the all the dots.
Yeah.
That would be really nice, because that's well, it's the future is bright in that area. So what I wanted to also propose, I don't know if we still have much time for that, and it's a bit tricky inside of a short presentation, but it's for you folks to actually try it out.
Oh, cool!
So
everybody has stickers. We can have rings.
That's right.
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
It's breaking up, so I can't really hear you well.
It sounds very cool.
So it's just going to be a very short exercise in doing that, because any more complex plans that I had kind of went out of the window because it would take really too much time. So, so if you have this with your Beaker, you should be able to access it with this one.
So wait, if I open Beaker,
I can't copy from here.
I can open and what is the?
Can you show the link again? I need some time. Maybe it works. I have Beaker, but maybe not the newest version.
-live.
Let's.
Wait.
Is there a place to copy and paste it? There used to be some place to copy
Yeah,
and paste.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There is some chat.
Sure. That should be easier.
But do I open? No, if I open in the Beaker, I do cat-live hashbase.io.
You need that whole URL, because the first part is jscan.xyz, so that's where JScan is, and then you just specify that it should load a URI that's of type that.
But I have to open it in Beaker. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that archive on which it's based is really only sadly available there for now. So.
Okay. I have a tool.
So no, you should be seeing something like
grid, access, auto rotate, and the cogwheel, and edit.
Oh yeah.
Do you have the cube showing?
Yes, I have the cube showing.
That's funny. I don't. Let me refresh.
That's fucking awesome.
The thing is,
are you saying that this will change when you change stuff?
Why don't I see it?
I don't know.
Which version of Beaker do you have?
It's 0.88, I think. I also tried it in a previous one from 6 months ago, and
Okay, mine is 0.88. What is yours?
it's the same one.
Uh-huh.
Where do I see that?
Settings and then something.
Not help. Settings. Okay.
But wait, why doesn't it show? Ah, now it shows for me.
0.88. Yeah, I also have
Okay, I have it. I have it now.
Okay, cool.
So the thing is, I had to upload a new version of OpenJSCAD because there was a bug. I hope that's already propagated, because otherwise the demo will just not work right now.
Figure it out. I mean, I never opened it yet in Beaker, so I guess I get the latest version at least.
Yeah, hopefully. That would be good.
We'll figure it out.
Let's see.
So normally, we're gonna do a very quick test. So is the screen still shared on my end?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just modify the size of the cube, and normally, and I do say normally, it should propagate as soon as I hit publish in the library.
Ah, so of course Beaker has also like editor.
Do I have?
That's right, I completely forgot about that. The thing is, since JSCAD is just basic JavaScript code, you can actually edit anywhere. So you're right, I completely forgot about that. I could really just edit it here.
Yeah.
So, are you seeing any updates?
No, not updates.
Not sure.
What?
Do I need to activate some kind of live feature?
No, it's by default. There's auto reload, it's always activated.
But what did you
I mean,
do?
I feel it looks the same as in your screen.
Can you add another shape, maybe? Like a circle?
Oh, now it's
yeah.
changed, but let's see if it also changes for me. Do I need to refresh? I'll wait a little bit.
I refreshed and then it is. But it didn't have
Should I also refresh?
Having to refresh kind of defeats the purpose of the live update. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to try to edit it again and see if it actually changes anything.
Didn't propagate to me yet.
Publish.
So for you, it updated already?
Wait, what will be now visible?
Now this means, unfortunately, the online version hasn't propagated.
Do I have
very
the
sorry
correct
about that.
link?
You have it.
It should
the
work
correct link,
during
but,
the course of the day.
Oh, okay, so it takes time.
Maybe it just takes a bit of
Weird.
time.
Well, no, because for me it should be instantaneous since it's local DAT.
Oh, wait, maybe you're in Germany and we're in Thailand?
Yes.
So maybe that adds a little bit of time?
Can you refresh, Alex?
I did refresh.
Never checked if basically the propagation speed from local DAT to hash base to another something else. So I'm not really aware of how slow or fast that would be. Anyway, we can also check something. I'm going to make sure that it actually works by. Normally, you should be able to access previous versions. And okay, no.
It changed. I think it changed. No, it didn't. Too bad.
If it doesn't
No, it
change the
didn't.
version, it means that there's still the old version of JSCAD hanging around.
Oh, so you mean I have an outdated version of the app?
Yeah, no, me too. It means it hasn't propagated it yet. That's quite unfortunate.
How does that propagate?
So,
Yeah.
well, it takes a while for
DHT?
our publication thing to have that working. So what I can do with that is, however, maybe.
Mark, what exactly?
I mean, you saw it
it means?
with the kappa-db, it worked instantly, even here.
Yeah, what does it mean with propagation? Does it mean that like all the discovery servers and I don't know what has to update, or?
That's just our basic.
One question.
server.
If you would instead create a new dot archive and give us the direct dot link and we don't go through the hash base link, do you think that might speed things up? Because we were able before to use a Cabal chat and we joined it from here and we could and we saw the changes, so that worked fast enough.
No, unfortunately, I don't think that's the issue because, for example, for me, I should be able to access previous versions. And
Yeah.
this was an old version of JSCAD, and it seems for some reason the version that I uploaded this morning is not there.
All right.
So very sorry about that. I hope normally it has been uploaded. I even checked the date and everything.
I mean, I see
Should
that
work.
it's working on yours, so I guess we still.
Maybe later we can try here in the same on the same network in the same country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think there's also the development version of OpenGSCAD, so you could also use that version. But normally this, I think it should work in a few hours. I don't know why it doesn't. Even force refresh doesn't change it, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay.
But well, I can still do the demo even if it's less interesting.
Yeah.
So if you
So that
have
we get the keychain.
I mean, at least I was able to load it. That's already something, right?
yeah, well, at least that works.
Yeah.
So here, for example, I went back in time too much because there wasn't even any JavaScript in there, and still not. Wait, which version should I take? I guess 6. And there's that version. You can also, you should be able, as soon as that works locally, to also be able to do exactly that. And yes, the thing is, you can live code with someone, so either in another editor or directly in Beaker. So you should be able to continuously edit that file and get something more interesting. Should I still continue coding and give you the final code?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe can you do it like, let's say 50-50? One half is the browser to see the preview, and the other half is the editor, so you can see it like in parallel.
Unfortunately, it seems that you can't have smaller tabs.
You cannot pull them out.
Side by side.
Oh, but like if you use the VS Code one, maybe you could do them side by side. Just
I have the
resize.
same problem with VS Code, strangely.
So that you
The thing is, by the
don't
way-
write code in the Beaker.
Ah, your operating system doesn't allow to.
Well, it works in Brave and Chrome, so there's some specific flags, I guess, that are not there.
Okay.
Wait, I can do actually something else. Wait, just a second. That should be actually.
Yeah, if you write code in the VS Code.
Like if you make your browser not full screen, wouldn't work?
I actually can't make it smaller.
Oh, okay.
For some
I
reason,
see.
I don't know why it's a weird version of Ubuntu that I'm using, and I
I see.
can do that in both things, but Beaker for some reason I can't.
Too bad.
We can always find a way because even it's an ugly editor, it works. So normally, oh wait, the thing is, this is not gonna update live. Of course,
Yeah.
this is just gonna update the code, then needs to be published. But
Yeah.
what I can do is, and this will work in any version, you can also just drag and drop folders. So this is just loading the folder from the file system. This has nothing to do with that.
All
See
right.
what I mean?
Yeah,
But
but
this still works.
I think basically then we can just do it normally.
Yeah.
When we started, right?
So you see it's here, you can see it updating live. As soon as it's saved, it will refresh. So this is basically exactly the same effect you would see via that, except you're not addressing the local file system. And by the way, it's also extremely practical in that you're able to go into nested folders. For example, there's the robots design, and that I need to, as you can see here, it's quite nested. So it's in a deeper folder because I usually like to separate CAD from the rest. And you can access so that the hash base part and then in a subfolder. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes. And those on the side are basically is a auto-generated form to allow you to set all the parameters that the code allows to set.
Yes. So this is actually something that you can define in your own code. So that was part of what I prepared, unfortunately. So what you do is just take a few parameters and you just provide a function which is called getParameterDefinitions. And you can say, okay, I want a parameter of this type, and then it's automatically provided to your main function. It gets injected back. And so here, as you can see, there it updated. So I could use it directly. So let's have them both side by side. It's going to be, so note that it's not updated.
So you can decide which parameters you want to show as going.
Exactly. So for example, let's just say we want to set the y dimension based on parameter.length. And then it will, and then you can just directly change that and it will update the design.
Sweet.
And again, in the end, it's just functions. That's, I think there's magic in simplicity. And honestly, this is why I also love the way that that is handling things, particularly in Beaker, because it's really a very good match, having something that easy that works this well out of the box.
Cool.
So, are there any other questions?
So if I use your tool, I just go to jscat.xyz in Beaker.
Exactly.
And then when
what's in a normal browser?
what do I have to do to publish? Like, how do I get the URL to share with others?
Well, that publishing is you just create your that archive normally as you would. So you go to your library and you can then just publish it via Hashbase, like you would do with any DAT.
Or with the command line to share.
Any local DATs also works, so it's not specific. So I have so many test things. So this is, for example, the local DATs for that design of earlier.
Yes,
cool.
So maybe one question, like, what is this tool? Is this like an organization, or is like just an open source hobby project, or are you having some financing for this? How does it work?
No, it's an open source project. It's been going on for years. I joined 3 or 4 years ago because it was kind of stagnating and there were no modules and things like that. And so we are 2 main maintainers. And yeah, unfortunately, no, financing is really not our thing. So well, we're working on it on our pace. So this is part of the new version, the V2, which is taking a bit ages to get out, but you can also, by the way, still use the previous version of OpenJSCAD at openjscat.org. That doesn't have most of the newer things like data integration and things like that, but it still works quite nicely. And so we're planning to be done with the new version this year, and then we'll see what time we have for nicer things.
So basically, you are creating this for free and giving it to the world for free. Exactly.
So there has been a lot of contributors over the years, and it's very practical because, for example, the old version also works very well on mobile. So we're going to make sure that it also works well for the new version. So basically, you could really code up a 3D design anywhere. Even on your cell phone, it actually works.
That's cool.
Yeah, maybe we should share it with more hack spaces to start using it, because they have these 3D printers, and this is a nice way to come up with something cool. Thank you very much, Mark, for taking time for us.
No problem. About the demo effect things, it's kind of too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you can influence this. So we recorded the whole thing and we'll share it later. So thanks for sharing.
Yes, thank you very much.
To everyone, and this was fun, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the other talks.
Yay. I mean, now today I think we're finished.
Yeah,
already.
I think, and we
But
have all of them recorded, and we will upload them to YouTube and share the link later, also on Telegram, and I can send them on Twitter. And maybe we can even do another round at some point on the glove. I mean, if you have time and if you feel like.
I haven't gotten US my kids.
The what?
When they are willing to, you can ask my kids when they are willing to give you time.
Yeah, 3 kids.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. All right.
Now you can design toys.
Yeah.
Actually, we have a fair bit of 3D printed toys, so and that's really worth it.
All right.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Thank you then.
Thank
See
you. See you.
online.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool. So I guess we can also stop streaming.
Yep.
Cool.